Hello, Taylor Ellwood here, and welcome to the latest episode of the Magical Experiments podcast. In today's episode, I answer a question that was asked in the Magical Experiments Facebook group, where the person basically ended up asking the following question. They said, is it okay to do different types of magic at the same time? For example, I'm delving into PGM, the Heptameron, and working with the deity Hecate. And really, kind of what I take away from that question is, can I work with different types of magic? Can I work with different systems of magic at the same time? So today I want to give my answer to that question, and I want to share a nuanced answer to that question, because I think that we can look at it from a couple different perspectives. One perspective would be, ideally you're only working with one system or one type of magic at a given time, because that's the best way to approach magical practice. The other nuanced perspective is I can work with multiple systems or multiple types of magic at the same time, and when I do that, I can make that work really well because of the interesting synthesis that comes out of it. Believe it or not, I'm actually a person who would have to say that I agree with both perspectives at different times. And so I want to qualify that. So sometimes I think that especially when you're first learning a given system or practice of magic, it can be really good to focus in on just that particular system. And the reason for that is because you're learning something new, and you're taking that in. And if you're working with multiple systems, those different systems can influence the way that you approach that one system that you're trying to learn. I think it's really important to have a solid foundation in a given magical practice that you're working with. And if you don't have a solid foundation, it can be good to take a break from everything else that you're doing and just really laser focus in on something that's important to you about that given system or practice. This is something that I will do on different occasions. So even though I have multiple systems of magic that I can draw on, when I get super focused on a given area of magic, I stay focused on that area of magic because that area is relevant to my spiritual practice, and it's something that I feel is essential for me in order to really understand and practice magic. I need to move forward with that and trust it, that I am learning that given system instead of forcing myself to take on too much at a given time. So when we're learning a given system, it could be good to just focus in on that specific system or practice for a while. On the other hand, I also think that it is possible to practice multiple types of magic, and that it can be really interesting to get a nuanced perspective on how those different types of magic work. So for example, I'm doing a lot of work with the Goetia right now, but I'm also doing a lot of work with Qigong, which is an energetic practice based off of Taoism. I am also doing some work with what's called the Sphere of Art, which is a Western sacromagical practice that's associated with a specific tradition that I'm part of. And I'm occasionally just doing some other miscellaneous spiritual practices. Lately I've been doing some work with Aphrodite and Eros in order to move some things in my life. I find it's really important to be... I find that it can be really helpful to work on those different systems, and I don't have to necessarily blend them together. I don't always blend them together. Sometimes I will do a given practice, like I do the Sphere of Art as a given overarching practice for everything else that I do, because it encapsulates a very specific space that I'm trying to create in my spiritual world and my practice. On the other hand, my work with the Goetia, kind of goes within that, but it also can fall outside of that. Some of the other practices that I'm doing at a given time, may or may not play a specific role in the relative systems. And yet, what I can find is that when I'm working on those different systems of practice, it's giving me some valuable contextual information that I can use and draw on in my spiritual practice that can be helpful for me. The other thing too is that I'm someone who likes to read multiple books at the same time. So if you look on the bookshelf behind me here, you can actually see second shelf down a bunch of books that have bookmarks in them. And the reason that I like to do that is because I like to take in multiple perspectives on different topics and see how those topics blend together. And it's a different approach to reading, because most people will just read one book or two books. I find, though, that sometimes reading multiple books can give me different perspectives and ideas and can create a rich blend and a synthesis that allows me to understand the different topics in relationship to each other and gives me some context that I can work with and draw on. So I think that, it's possible to, like, for example, to read multiple books and get something out of those books. And, again, sometimes I just want to focus on reading one book. So it's the same thing with our magical practice. And at the end of the day, as a practitioner, I'm going to also say, don't take my word for it or anyone else's word for it. Figure out what the best approach for you is with magical practices. Sometimes, just because somebody says it should be done this way or it shouldn't be done this way, you have to ultimately determine for yourself what works for you. And you're going to do that through trial and error, through experimentation, through discovery, through getting curious about what you can learn when it comes to magical practices. So open yourself up to that possibility. You don't have to have all the answers. You don't have to know everything. You do need to ideally keep yourself open-minded toward what you're doing, because this can help you discover a richness to your magical practices and to your life that you would otherwise miss out on. And so I think, having sometimes being able to draw upon that multiplicity can be good. But again, discover for yourself. So if you're trying, if you're, practicing multiple systems, see how it works or doesn't work. Pay close attention to the experiences. If you're finding that, for example, that you're not getting some of the results that you want, then you might reflect and say, is it because I'm working with two different systems that are clashing? Well, if they're clashing, that could create a problem. And there's a valuable lesson there for you to learn from that experience. So keep that in mind. And, if you have any questions, feel free to comment on this video. But that is my answer to that question. Thanks, and have a great day.